Do you want me to start from the beginning?
Yeah, go ahead and start from the beginning. Are you ready?
Okay.
3, 2, 1, go.
Hi there, and welcome back for our next segment of China painting. We are working on a specialized background today. This background will go on this piece that we were talking about that we just finished all the painting on except the background. So what we're going to do is do the marbleized background so that you can take that piece and put your marbleized background on it. It will be on a different piece. It's going to be on this piece that we did with the little kitten. It has a lot more space to work in. It gives us an opportunity to see the marbleized background. And it'll give you a chance to know what you have to do next with the kitten, okay? We basically did a first fire on this already. The first fire being just a smooth coating of some fur and to paint the ball, you know, and a couple of shadows here and there on the cat. But we're going to put in our marbleized background by starting with these little bitty areas where the little spaces come in here like this. And we're going to paint that with the marbleizing paint, or actually what we use for our fast drying medium mixed with paint, has got something in it called Mat Versailles. And Mat Versailles is a matting agent. The matting agent is white, like this. This is our matting agent. And so you want to make sure that it's labeled because you can mistake it for enamel. You can mistake it for white paint because there is such a thing as white paint. So you want to make sure that you have that paint labeled so that you don't mix it up, okay? We're going to mix it to kind of a soupy consistency. It looks like this. Here's our soupy consistency. We have mixed this about 1/4 Mat Versailles to 3/4 of the blue-gray. We're using blue-gray for our background because it's most complementary to the blue that is being used in the painting. You have to think about your colors and why you're using certain colors the way we are. It is going to string. It's kind of on the thin side. It's not like our regular paint. It's coming out kind of thin. That's okay. You want it to be thin enough that it doesn't get dry too fast because we are going to be working basically in segments with this, okay? Now we're going to take this little kitten and we're going to go to the smallest areas where there's some openings with a small brush. Start there. And one of the things you want to do too is you want to get right up to the lines that you have in here because these lines are the guidelines that we put in originally. Sometimes we do this by putting resist on, and you will have to do that with your wild rose. You'll have to resist the entire piece or the entire area that is painted now. And then go ahead and do your modeled background. On this kitten, you don't need to do that. It's such a big piece that it doesn't matter. You can get in and not have to do resist. But while you're doing it, you're going up next to the kitten with all the lines, the guidelines that you see. You want to do away with the guidelines. At the same time, you want to have a very small piece of saran ready so that you can do something to this background while you're working on it, because it will get dry. By the time that you got through the whole piece, you would have dry paint on it. And you wouldn't be able to go back and do this. You can model this by using odd brush strokes. In other words, it doesn't have to be real smooth. It can be a little bit, you know, you can see little places where it comes through. You can do that with it. Or you can take a small sponge like this one. This is a makeup sponge, And you notice that it has a pointed end. It's, in other words, it's pie-shaped or wedge-shaped, so that you can use this to get into little corners. And you can use the corner of your sponge. You can use the flat of your sponge. You can use the back of your sponge. You have many areas and many sizes that you can choose from. And it's flexible so that you can roll it like this and use that to sponge your piece if you need to. In this case, because we're doing very small areas, we're going to get this little bit in here like this. Notice that the kitten's paws have a little tiny bit of paint on the edge of the paws that makes them kind of pink. But the pink is very pale. Not all of the paws are pink, obviously. But we're going to paint this gray in all these little spaces like this. Take our silk. Clean off anything that lays on the body of the kitten. And then take our brush back and clean it down and paint it all the way down to the framed area. You notice that we put a frame on this. This frame is not going to be perfectly straight, and that's okay, because we can straighten that out when we get done with this. We want to make sure that we get this filled in. Now all the small areas are filled. This area would be on the outside. Let me show you again. Right here, where the ball of string comes out here and a part of the string comes out like this, the part of the background is going to show. That's going to be the area that's going to be with the frame. So the color for the frame will go in those little loops. We don't need to worry about that with this color. We're just going to worry about getting this color in so that we fill those little areas. Now we're going to take this stuff. This is the saran, and we'll just kind of wad it up like this. Get it kind of irregular. Make sure that it's got wrinkles all over it. This is one time we want the wrinkles, okay? And we can put the wrinkles even on the bottom. And we can take that sponge and go on the corner and just hit that little area right there in the middle so that it is mottled. Don't hit it too hard. Just lightly tap it. You don't need to lift a lot of paint off. Okay? So that it looks like this at this point. Too much of the color came off in this little corner, so we'll just paint that back in a little bit and then hit it with your finger. Now take your silk or a wipeout tool. You can take a wipeout tool and come back in and just clean off those little edges that has a little bit of paint on it, because you don't want the paws to have all this paint on there. Now that section is actually done. All you have to do is clean up this edge a little bit and you're done with everything in this section. You don't have to worry about doing anything else to it. That part is done. That's our mottled background so far. Now we're going to take a bigger brush. This one being a number 12. And load it with paint. And we're going to take this color and start painting small sections. You notice that this whole design here has got sections here, here, here. even in here. You can take that color and do the whole thing one section at a time. Work that section, sponge it, and then go back to the next section. Okay, here we go. Now this is on the outside edges of this animal. And we don't have to have it perfect because we're going to sponge it anyway with that Saran, okay? This stuff is already starting to set up a little bit because fast drying medium does tend to dry. So you want to work with this while you can still keep it open. And you want to work with it so that it will dry, because then you can come back and actually work on the animal if you wish before you put it in the kiln. Right now you're working with just the background. Okay. Also, you're coming up against the outer part of the animal, you know, like his fur and all that sort of thing. Try to use the wedge of your brush to get into the fur that you have already established. Okay, we got that much done. We'll take this little piece of Saran again. Bunch it up pretty good. We will go ahead and sponge this area right here. See how that works? It looks quite mottled. Okay. You're done. All you have to do now, this is kind of a nice, fun background to do, you know, because you don't have to work really hard at it. It's just fun to be able to do something that's different, you know, and the fact is that when you're a beginning painter, you don't want to have to mess with a whole lot of different things with background. You want to try to do something that's a little simpler so that you can get at the job of learning how to China paint in the first place. Okay, here we go. Cleaning off the edges and so forth. Remember that you're going to have fur right here. And you can come through that fur with your pick or your pin. You have a hat pin here. You can take the hat pin and you can come to the edge of this little thing and just come up against the edges with your fur if you wish, if it will work. In some cases it doesn't work very well because the paint doesn't want to move or it doesn't want to do what you want it to do. So use a rubber pick. The only thing you don't want to do is get those hairs so that they're really, really strong. What you want is to take a pick and you want to pull that pick down and just lift up as you pull, okay? So that you get short hairs on the outside edge. You don't want really long hairs unless you have a Angora. You know, if you have an Angora cat, then you're going to have to probably do a little bit more, you know, because it's going to have long draping fur and so forth. But for this one, we don't have long draping fur. We want it to be simple, okay? It's a little bit easier to work with. Okay, now we're going to take this section. That means getting a whole lot of paint on. Remember, it's already drying. So when you put this on, you want to start moving with it as fast as you can. See how long those strokes are? I'm just putting paint on. I'm not worried about blending it because remember, it's going to be automatically blended anyway. Because it's automatically going to have that Saran that's going to change all of that. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to have a decent coat on there that you can move. All right? All right. We'll paint half of this so that you can see what we're going to do to complete the animal on this fire. It has had one fire, only one, and this is our second fire. Always when you paint, you need to prepare yourself to paint first fire a soft base coating, okay? This little thing that I've got here is very handy, and you can have one most any place you can find something like this. I think they have them probably in ceramic shops even. You know, they have them just about anywhere. You can go all kinds of places to get these little turntable things like this. You can even use a turntable that you have for your cupboards. It will be flatter. It won't come up to the level that this one does, but it would still work just the same way, and you could just lay your piece on it. This piece, this stuff that is here, is just loose. It's just this rubberized material that you use in your cabinets. Just cut a circular piece and put it onto your little turntable. The little turntables, as I said, you can get them for your cupboards, and when if you don't want to use them for this all the time, you can always put it back in your cupboard and use it for something in your cupboard. So it's not just a wasted effort, you know. But anyway, we're going to paint right up again along that line. Okay. Now we're going to take that stuff and wrinkle it up as best you can. Put it on there and just push this stuff on there. Okay, here we go. Go all the way up to the edge of the little square and make sure that you get it up next to the body of the cat. You know, make it pretty nice. It doesn't have to be smooth. It just needs a nice texture there. And remember not to push too hard. Okay, now you take your silk and just come right down that edge and clean off all the excess paint that is coming out into the edge, like so. Okay? How about that? Is there anything more fun than this? I mean, really, this is fun. It's not a hard thing to do. It's just remembering what the steps are. You know, once you get onto this, you're going to want to try it again because it's really fun. And remember, this is the precursor to what you're going to be doing on your wild rose, okay, for your background. All right. How about that? Now your back of your kitten, of course, needs to be wiped off as well. You don't want all of this stuff on this little kitten. So you're going to come right up to the guideline. Those guidelines are so handy for this. This is really nice to have those guidelines. And they're not going anywhere. They're fired on so that you always have that guideline. All right, there you go. Then you simply take your little rubber pick and you go along the outside edge and you pick out some of these little hairs and things that are on the outside edge of your kitten. Be sure to get your wipeout tool in here too and kind of clean things up a little bit because you may get some residue from some of this work. Okay? Here we go. We're going to get these little hairs on the outside edge, and then we're going to take the wipeout tool and we're going to push up into that. And clean that out. It doesn't have to be perfect, of course, you know, but at least, you know, you get the feel of what's happening here with this little kitten. Okay. And you've got some background on there that you've gotten a chance to do so that you get the feel of doing this background. It's very fun. Tap off some of this with your sponge. This is a handy little sponge to use for this because you can come right up to the edges and just tap lightly so that you get any buildups that you might have had from doing the work. And pick up all the buildup or the excess paint that comes onto the piece like so. This is simpler than having to deal with all of the background that we had to deal with on the wild rose and all that sort of thing with the decklac, you know, your resist and all that kind of thing. So this is kind of nice, you know, just be able to relax a little bit. Okay, here we go. This is what our kitten looks like right now. Now, when you're doing the kitten, when you start working with the kitten, you're going to find that the first thing that you have to do is concern yourself with his facial features. Always, it's like a portrait. You do the face first, and then you do the body. Now we're going to clean out all this stuff out of our brush because we're not going to finish the background. It's just, it's boring to sit and watch someone do all this stuff when you want to get at the other stuff. You want to try to learn something about the animal. We're going to soften this area with a clean brush right in here. Just soften that a little bit so that it's not quite so dark, so that it matches everything else we've got going on here. The rest of it looks pretty good. Maybe clean this up just a tad. Okay, there we go. Now we're going to save that brush. We're going to use our liner to start with the eye. His face is facing a little differently. This is a beginner's animal, and mainly because it has got a view that is simpler to do. You don't see his full face. You don't see lots and lots of details on him, but you can make a few details by working with your brush, okay? We'll start with the liner. We're going to take a little bit of yellow-brown paint and brown. This eye is facing away from us. We start with the eye first. We're going to turn this so that we don't get our hands in the paint. We'll go to the eye right here. It's very small because of the direction that it's facing. We can paint that color in like so. Now you can see the eye. You can widen it out just a little tad by pushing up on the eye a little bit and making it more solid at the top. There we go. Remember, it has another color in the eye so that when you wipe out, you're going to have a highlight that's going to have part of that yellow showing through. Okay. You use your rubber pick first. And again, rest your hand on this little area here. Put your highlight in. You can already see that yellow showing through. There we go. Here's our kitten. He looks pretty cool, doesn't he? He looks pretty sharp. Okay. Next, we're going to work with a smaller brush. This is number 4. You can use the number 4. You can use a number 2 if you like, if you want to get smaller. You start by taking some of the brown, and you're going to work these little markings on his body, okay? Put your hand on the piece so that you don't touch that is in this box right here, okay? Come down into this right here. Short little strokes, okay? Really short little strokes will be enough to build that fur right there. Now, one of the things you're going to do is try to make the markings on his fur. You don't have anything, if you don't have anything to go by, you just have to use your imagination. Lots of times I don't have anything to go by, but a lot of times I try to, because I want to be correct in how the animal is built, how he's constructed, and I want to make sure that I get the markings correct. Wipe out your brush. Come back to the animal, resting your arm on the piece like so. And then bring your color around to the eye to build that area up a little bit. Okay, there he is. The top of the head is going to have the light. He's bending down, or his head is bending down at least. So because his head is bending down, you don't want to get all the light lost up here. Try to get all of your markings that you can in on this fire. This is your second fire. So if you do the background like this, you can let your paint set on the other side if you wish for a little bit so that you can get in here and do this. This is not incorrect, but the fact is we're trying to get this going as fast as we can because we want you to get into this opportunity of working with your subject matter. Top of the ears, a little bit of color. This will define the ears, and then bring some of the color back just a bit. Try to go as close to the guidelines as you can so that the guidelines disappear. Okay? Alrighty. I'm getting a little farther down, if you notice, with my hand on the brush because I need more control. And when you're working this area and you're trying to get all these little things in there, you do want more control. Wipe some of the color out. Come back and soften this just a little bit. Take a little bit of medium and work that out. There we go. Then come back and clean this area and leave that little bit of light in there so that you don't have this thing completely dark. Clean it out again. Pull that color up. You need to stay in one area until you're done with it, or mostly done. But your kitten should look like this right now. All right? Okay. More brown. The second ear is the next area that we're going to work on, and it's coming toward us. So we're going to get the color on the ear right here. Notice how much more the ear begins to look like it's coming out of the painting toward us. It's just an illusion, of course, but we can make it look like it's actually coming out toward us. Magic is magic. Okay, now we're going to soften this color. We may need to oil the brush a little bit to get the excess paint out, and then soften the color back into the back of his ear, like so. Let's bring a little bit of this color down into his jowl, just a little bit, so that it makes more sense. This is nice to have this little thing to rest your piece on from time to time. You need something to rest your piece on, especially if you're working on a tile. Quite often, even working with a plate can be a hardship, especially if you have arthritis, which I don't, but I do know that plenty of people do. And if you have arthritis, this is something to keep in mind. You need something to help you hold your piece. Okay. More markings. And here's one coming back in here. Now, what you want to do is you want to, at this point, notice that this fur is starting to form. It's starting to get that furry look, okay? What you can do is take this little thing. This is a packing sponge. And the packing sponge can give you a little more texture. You can see that at the top of it, it's got texture on it. Just lay it on this a little bit and kind of softly sponge that so that it becomes softer. Don't let these little markings get carried away, okay? You want to make sure that he has some soft markings in here. Okay. Now, one of the things, too, that we know is that these little guys have little markings on the top of their eyes. If they have any markings, that usually is something that happens, and these markings will come right about in here, right by the eye. You go up above the eye and start here. It's like an eyebrow. Okay? All right? We're not worried about shadows. We're just getting some markings on. Shadows come later. We'll get some of these little markings right down in here. Okay, there he is. This is our little guy right now. Okay. Now we're going to take this guy and do a little spot under his chin. You notice too that he has got white underneath him, his neck. Well, most mixed colored cats have a white spot right there. They have that white bib. So we're going to put a little bit of color right up next to that little white bib. with the edge of our brush. We're using the side of our brush. We're using our flat brush to make those little wedge shapes, kind of. They're straight shapes, okay? And we're going to do that. And we're going to paint a little bit of this shadow in there and soften it away. Okay. We're going to the other leg over here. We've got another spot where the color comes up next to that bib in the front of his body. We're going to paint over this area, and we're going to look at some of the areas we wiped out with the rubber pick and so forth, and we're going to bring that color in with the side of the brush again, and just bring that color right over the top of what was underneath there. We're going to make a shadow in here. Leave some of the light color. Don't take all of the light color away. We're going to use some for shadow. We're going to make some shadow, but we've got to leave an area where there's going to be a certain amount of light that's hitting the leg. Take this little guy, get up close to him, pull that color right along that line where that guideline was left, okay? Come up against the nose. Pull some color up next to the nose. That's as much work as you have to do on the nose. Isn't that cool? I think that's so neat, you know, because you don't really have to work with this thing like you would if you had all those details to look at. Trust me, that's going to come soon enough. But you do this guy and it'll make it easier for you to work on another one. One that's a little more advanced. Okay. Okay, there he goes. There he is. Kind of pretty, isn't he? He's a pretty little guy. Okay. Leave some of these yellow areas. You could make him calico. And you can build a little patch of fur right in there that's going to be this kind of yellow area. Okay. Now you may want to switch to a little bigger brush like this one. This is our number 6. Check it to make sure there isn't color in it. And there is. How many times has that happened? How many of you would like to have a green cat? Not me. I'd figured there was something wrong with that cat. So now we'll take the brown and we will come in here like this, where that yellow area is, and just kind of work it like so. We know that he's going to have a little bit of color here. This is his arm, leg, whatever. Okay. This leg also has a guideline on it, so you want to make sure that you get those guidelines a little bit. You don't want all these things to show, so we're going to work with this, getting the guidelines, and keep this kind of light down here at the bottom where it's going to come into the darker or the lighter fur, the little white boots on his legs that I have left on mine. You don't have to leave white boots if you don't want to. Okay. Color. Not working with a lot of color. It's actually when you are working with birds and animals, portraits and things like that, you are working with an economy of color. You're working with very little color. but this will give you a chance to get started. You don't need lots and lots of color. You can use your regular palette for a long time before you need any more. You may not need it, but you may want some different colors, like maybe you would like to try your hand at something with gold content colors. Gold content colors are beautiful, just beautiful. Okay. Alrighty. Now maybe his tail is going to be a ring tail. So maybe what you want to do on the tail is to do a little bit of dark at the base and then turn it around like so and try to work a ring tail by making little short strokes on the tail with the side of your brush. See how that works? You're starting to get that. That cat is getting some real character, isn't he? Just space them fairly evenly. They don't have to be perfect, but you know, a cat is going to have, if it has a ringtail, it's definitely going to be a ring of color. Okay, so that it looks like this at this point. See that? He's pretty fun, isn't he? Very fun to work animals and birds. This is the most fun you're going to have, is doing these easy portraits and easy fun things to do. When you get more serious, the portraits have more detail. So do the animals, because then you start to choose things that have more markings on them, like tigers and lions don't have markings so much, but they do have definite long mane characters, you know, certain characters that other animals wouldn't have, you know, are what is characterized in the lion. So keep that in mind. This cat is definitely not an Angora. An Angora would have another problem because it has more fur, longer, shaggier fur, and it becomes a new project altogether. Okay. There we go. This area right here should be brought around the cat so that the fur is going in the right direction. The legs, the fur usually goes downward and then flows out from the leg. One of the things that you can do to make fur is you can take an old brush, you know, like a quill is really good for this. The quill tends to roll. You can take a quill and actually roll it in your fingers and split the hairs. Okay. I don't think I have one anymore, or if I do, it's kept in a special place. But what you want to do is you want to roll that brush in your fingers. Let's see if I have one on the other side of this. I don't usually have quills anymore, but a quill is nice in that you can roll it. It would be, a quill is a little longer than the average, and you would take, it's square like these. You can take that brush, even one of these, you can take a liner brush like this, and you can split it like this. Just split the hairs. Take a little bit of oil, pull it through your brush, load the color on like so, and then split the hairs like this. Then take the brush, I'll show you on the bottom here, and you can take the brush and actually pull this brush like this. See how it makes the hairs? Fun, huh? You can do this on a furry animal, okay? It looks just like this. All right? Just pull the brush slowly, and it will leave a little bit of line there. And it is great for fur. It's not only great for fur, but it's great for other things. If you were doing a scene, for instance, this is great. You don't have to have a special brush to do this. But if you happen to have a quill, you can do that. But you need to roll it in your fingers. You know, you just take a hold of that brush and just roll it. Just like I did with this one. And like I said, the liner brush works just fine. You can do that with a liner brush because it's got long enough hairs that you can do this, and then just split those hairs like this. And when you apply the paint, then you're going to get hairs. Okay? That's one way to do it. And where would we apply this? Well, let me show you. We can take this baby, turn it around like so, and lay that on the edge where you have your white fur, and just pull those edges right there. And all of a sudden, you've got a furry edge, just like this. See that furry edge right there? You can pull it this way and pull it into the fur so that you get another effect. You can do this back and forth until you get comfortable with what you're doing with your animal and your fur. Okay? Why not? It's your piece. Okay, there we go. Your piece is far from finished, obviously, you know, on this fire. But you can see all the different things that you can do to make your finished piece, get your little animal to looking like something. You do need to work on your markings. If you have spots, you can take a wipeout tool and you can actually make little spots in the fur like this. If you don't like the spots, you don't want the spots, you can always leave them out. But little spots in the fur normally are spread out enough that it almost looks like polka dots. And you can do that on another fire. You don't have to do it on this fire. Take your time with your animal. Look at all of his features. He does have a face that you are going to have to contend with to some extent. You're going to have to come back into this area and do something with the nose so that you get a little roundness to the face. You need to get his little whiskers in there. He doesn't have any whiskers at this time. So you can take rubber pick and you can pull through and make little hairs like that. But you're not going to see them next time anyway. So I recommend that you don't mess with them. Don't even get involved. Instead, Just paint a little bit of shadow on his face, right there, just enough to give it roundness, to define where his nose is and so forth, and leave it alone. Fire this, come back on another firing, and do the details. All right? So much for our kitten. You have gotten enough information so that you can finish your background on your little wild rose. And your little kitten takes very, very little effort to finish up. A little more added to the shadows, maybe a little bit more before you fire. But be careful about getting too much paint on for this fire, because you're going to have plenty of details that you're going to be looking at next fire. Get a little shadow right here where the arm comes together. Make sure that you do that. And check by tipping your piece to the light, check to make sure that you don't have any hairs that has gotten in the paint. This is quite common, by the way. It happens a lot. And your kitten is ready to fire as soon as you get the rest of the background on. All right? I hope you've enjoyed painting the little animals, the beginner's animals. I hope that you have gotten enough information to feel confident in that you're going to go on with another animal later on. And the next step, of course, would be to try a little bird, a little baby bird. Those are always fun. So on our next segment, we'll be working on the birds. This segment, you have done everything you can to the little kitten except for the details. All right? Hope you've had fun today, as much fun as I've had painting and teaching you. And I look forward to the next day, and I hope you will too. In the meantime, happy painting.
That's fabulous.
All right then.
Good job.
All right, we're in our time frame?